Maybe someday we will have a robot president. You know, couldn't be worse than what we have right now, shortly after his wife gives birth. And he keeps saying, it was brought to his attention today that we're the only country that does mail-in voting. When is somebody going to step in and tell him that is not true? 34 countries have mail-in voting. All the countries that have mail-in voting. So here's where the real magic comes in. That was yesterday. Guess what he did today? That's right, he voted by mail today for the special election in Florida. He's unbelievable.
Jimmy Kimmel didn't just highlight a contradiction in Trump's behavior. He pointed towards something much bigger, a pattern that keeps repeating where statements change faster than they can be tracked. What he brought up about Trump's stance on Iran, the shifting narratives, the way attention seemed to move away from the Epstein issue, and the impact on the economy made it feel less like a simple disagreement and more like a deeper problem. It came across as decisions being presented as strong leadership, while the details told a different story. Kimmel started calmly, but as events continued, his words began to feel less like commentary and more like something that was slowly proving itself right.
Someday we will have a robot president. You know, couldn't be worse than what we have right now.
Kimmel's argument becomes even harder to ignore when you look at it closely, because even something as basic as consistency seems to be missing. The comparison he hinted at was simple. Even a machine would follow information, process it, and remember past decisions. But here the situation feels unpredictable. Instead of clear direction, there are sudden shifts that appear to distract from ongoing controversies. One of the earliest signs of this changing dynamic showed up in Palm Beach, an area closely tied to Trump's base. Yet even there, support didn't hold the way it once did, raising questions about how stable that influence really is.
We got a sneak peek at what might be in store for Team Trump come November at the elections. I mentioned last night, Mr. Ban Mail-in Voting voted by mail in a special election in Palm Beach. This is a district Trump won by double digits 2 years ago, and the district he lives in. But seems like maybe the magic is wearing off, because last night, a Democrat, Emily Gregory, scored a major upset over a Republican that Trump endorsed. She won one solidly red seat in the state legislature, which is a real kick in the golf balls for Mar-a-Lago.
Trump gave full support to a candidate in his own district, making it clear he stood behind him completely. Despite that, the result went the opposite way, and not quietly either. Losing to a Democrat in Florida made the outcome even more noticeable, because it challenged expectations about where his influence still held strength and where it might be starting to fade.
Though Trump said the Republican candidate, John Maples, had his complete and total endorsement, and that John will never let you down. And he's right, he won't, because he's back to work as a financial planner. He lost the race. The idea that Trump voted by mail at the same time he's trying to ram this Save My Fat Orange Ass Act through Congress right now, which is a bill that would do away with mail-in ballots, has put leaders in the GOP in a bit of a...
This wasn't exaggerated for effect. It was presented exactly as it happened. Instead of focusing on election security or voter protection, the emphasis seemed to shift toward protecting Trump himself. The irony becomes hard to ignore when you consider that he used mail-in voting while publicly criticizing the same system, creating a gap between what is said and what is actually done, where the rules seem flexible depending on the situation.
Speaker of the House, Mike Johnson, was asked about this latest act of brazen hypocrisy and did a little tap dance around it.
President Trump has railed against mail-in voting as rigged. He said it's a form of cheating as recently as Monday. But in yesterday's special election in Florida, he voted by mail. How do you square those two statements?
Look, I think some states have handled mail-in balloting well. I think Florida is a good example of that. They don't allow fraud, and they have great systems. That is not true in other parts of the country, and that is the concern, especially in a state like California.
Right. You know, Florida, as we all know, is very buttoned down, very normal, whereas California, it's a madhouse. Listen, I've lived in both states. I've lived in Florida. I've lived in California. The only thing Florida does better is get manatees addicted to meth, all right? If you're looking to buy a hot dog from a woman in a G-string, Florida is the place you want to be. Otherwise, you're better.
There are real concerns in Florida that go beyond political messaging. including environmental issues affecting marine life. Yet public figures continue to describe the state as if everything is running perfectly. At the same time, places like California are portrayed as unstable, even though they represent one of the largest economies. The contrast is clear, and it points toward a disconnect between how situations are described and what is actually happening. Kimmel's focus on this wasn't just about contradiction, but about whether those making decisions fully understand the situations they are presenting.
Largely because, according to NBC News, Trump gets a sizzle reel every day that only shows us attacking them. NBC said there's a daily montage. It typically runs for about 2 minutes, sometimes longer. He sees it every day. One official described the videos as a series of clips of stuff blowing up. And these video briefings are said to be fueling concerns among some of Trump's allies that he might not be receiving or absorbing the complete picture of the war. He's only seeing the positive stuff, which helps to explain why he keeps saying we already won the war that is still going.
This isn't just strong language for impact. It reflects real concerns being discussed publicly. While Florida faces ongoing issues, the messaging around it often presents a completely different picture. At the same time, other states are described in extreme ways that don't fully match reality. That contrast raises questions about whether these narratives are meant to inform or simply influence perception. Kimmel used this moment to suggest that the gap between reality and presentation might be wider than it appears.
White House spokesman Caroline Leavitt released a statement pushing back on the story. She said anyone who has been present for conversations with President Trump knows he actively seeks and solicits the opinions of everyone in the room and expects full-throated honesty from all his top advisors. That sounds like him, right? I mean, this is the guy who said, I know more about ISIS than all the generals. That's Donald. Very collaborative, Donald.
Instead of detailed briefings and full context, the situation is described as being reduced to simplified highlights, almost like watching selected moments rather than understanding the full picture. Visuals, reactions, and impact take priority, while deeper explanations about consequences and strategy seem to fade into the background. That approach makes serious decisions feel more like reactions than carefully considered actions.
Every day, they're bringing him these fun little action movies of us blowing stuff up. Everyone's telling him how great he's doing. He's got 4 whole cable networks dedicated to kissing his ass 24/7. His staff is terrified to ever bring him any bad news, and he has the memory of a worm at the bottom of a bottle of mezcal. And this is the man in charge of sending our children to war, at least the ones whose dads don't have a good podiatrist to get them out of it. It's really something.
These points weren't presented as exaggerated jokes, but as observations based on what was happening. When it's said that different viewpoints are being heard, it often feels like agreement is expected. And once that agreement disappears, so does influence. That dynamic changes how decisions are made and who remains part of the conversation.
That is another consequence of this war in Iran. The president's former pen pal, Kim Jong-un, says the lesson that he's learned is that you can't trust the sweet talk from the U.S. And as a result, he says he's going to make sure North Korea's nuclear status is irreversible. So I guess Trump wrote all those love letters for no reason at all. And to really rub it into his pumpkin face, Kim Jong-un was just reelected to a third term with 99.93% of the vote. The other 0.07% are dead. They're deceased now.
Trump publicly spoke positively about a leader often viewed as controversial, presenting the relationship in a favorable way. But the long-term effect of that approach appears to have reduced trust rather than building it. Other countries responded in their own ways, continuing their actions without hesitation, which added to global tension instead of reducing it. At the same time, leadership within defense structures appeared uncertain, adding another layer of concern.
You can see Pete is fired up.
The president has made it clear that you will not have a nuclear weapon. The War Department agrees. Our job is to ensure that. And so we're keeping our hand on that throttle as long as hard as is necessary to ensure the interests of the United States of America are achieved.
That's the moment the Cialis kicked in.
If you observe closely, the differences become noticeable not just in policy, but in presentation. The tone, pacing, and clarity during serious discussions sometimes feel inconsistent, which doesn't inspire confidence in situations that require precision. Instead, it raises questions about whether everything is being handled with the level of focus it demands, especially when the stakes are as high as they are.
Iranians have said they will not accept Jared Kushner or Trump's special envoy to the Middle East, Steve Witkoff, as negotiators. The Iranians have a nickname for Jared. They call him the sorrowful broomstick, which sounds better in Farsi, and it's weird that the Iranians don't want to negotiate with Trump's son-in-law, whose primary job experience before this was holding Ivanka's purse. It seems very unfriendly. They want J.D. Vance to be the point person on top.
In global discussions, figures like Jared Kushner are often viewed less for expertise and more for their connections. That perception becomes important when decisions involve complex negotiations that require deep understanding. The response from other parties reflects that skepticism, as they choose to engage with individuals they see as more grounded, even if those choices seem unconventional.
The lives of millions of people are now in the hands of a man who struggled to order a donut. And whatever the outcome, the president has been very successful, you have to admit, in changing the narrative from the Trump-Epstein files to the war. There's been very little in the way of repercussions, in this country at least, for the many men who socialized with Epstein and did business with him, including one of his former lawyers, Epstein pal and Trump sycophant Alan Dershowitz.
Kimmel's most serious point shifts the focus beyond individuals and toward timing. The idea that certain events may have been used to redirect attention away from ongoing issues raises questions about intention. If attention moves at the right moment, other problems fade from focus, even if they haven't been resolved, while the impact continues to build elsewhere, particularly in economic pressure.
I have to give them points for imagination. According to the New York Times, in some states, gas prices have now jumped more than 30% over the last 2 weeks. And according to the White House, no, they haven't. But what happened to all that oil we got from Venezuela? I thought we were going to be swimming in it. And on top of that, the blockade in the Strait of Hormuz is preventing imports of nitrogen, which is a key ingredient in the fertilizer American farmers need to grow crops, to grow our food. The price of fertilizer has skyrocketed since the war.
Costs began rising across essential areas, from fuel to agriculture, affecting everyday life. Despite that, official messaging often suggested stability, creating a gap between what people experienced and what they were told. Promises of solutions were made, but over time it became clear that those solutions were not materializing, leaving people questioning whether those claims were ever realistic.
The administration is shelling out $1 billion of our money to a French energy company to cancel construction of wind turbines in North Carolina and New York. He's paying this company to not build these renewable energy farms because he has this weird hatred of what he calls windmills. He says they're unsightly, they're ugly monsters, they're losers, a con job, they're bad for the environment, and they make a lot of noise, which is exactly how most of us feel.
Large amounts of funding were directed toward blocking renewable energy projects, sometimes based on personal views rather than practical concerns. Strong language was used to criticize these developments, shaping how they were perceived publicly. Kimmel's response reflected a wider frustration, not just as humor, but as a reaction to how these decisions are being understood by those affected.
The president, there was some major progress yesterday thanks to a mysterious gift.
You think I trust them? I don't trust them.
Then why bother talking to them?
Because they're going to make a deal. They're going to make a deal. They did something yesterday that was amazing, actually. They gave us a present, and the present arrived today. And it was a very big present worth a tremendous amount of money. And I'm not going to tell you what that present is, but it is a very significant prize. And they gave it to us, and they said they were going to give it, so that meant one thing to me: would deal with the right people.
In the end, the situation didn't need exaggeration to make an impact. Trump's own statements and actions created the narrative that Kimmel continued to highlight, piece by piece, showing each contradiction as it happened. When the idea of a future robotic leader was mentioned, the response wasn't just a joke, but a comparison that pointed toward the current situation. Over time, the events that followed only seemed to reinforce that perspective rather than challenge.